recent meet I saw 3 of these, 3 Ferrari Pistas, which tells me only one thing. There's far too many self-indulgent wieners in this club with too much bloody money. Now, if I was driving a 1967 275 GTB 4Cam, I wouldn't be a self-indulgent wiener. I'd be a connoisseur. Now, before all you Pista owners complain, I'm merely paraphrasing from the Nicolas Cage film Gone in 60 Seconds. And that has to be one of my favourite lines, as is the car it's referring to, because if there is a true connoisseur's Ferrari, it would have to be one of these, a 275 GTB 4. The 275 GTB 4 has often been regarded as one of the best ever front engine Ferraris ever built. It has that 3.3 litre Colombo V12 up front, and the gearbox in the back giving a near 50-50 weight distribution. It's a beautiful thing to drive, especially on a road like this. And it's not just beautifully engineered, it's absolutely gorgeous to look at. There are a few hints of E-Type jag in there, and that's no real surprise because in 1961 Enzo saw an E-Type at the motor show and he said it was the most beautiful car he'd ever seen. So I think he went back, had a word with his designers and said, Sergio, give it a bit of that. It's sleek and yet understated, especially in this dark blue. You know, I'm always shocked. Every time I get into a 1960s Ferrari, I expect it to be terrible. And I always get in and find that they're so beautifully engineered. Everything works so well, the steering's precise, the brakes are incredible. For a car of this age, there's some real serious stopping power. The original 275 GTB came about in 1964, and then later on the quad cam heads were developed, which were placed onto this in 1966, and the way that you can tell, that bulge in the bonnet, just to allow for the bigger heads. Now that also pushed power up to 300 brake horsepower, which was a fair bit back in those days. You can use all of that power and exploit this beautiful handling. And I still can't get over the brakes. First time I jumped in it, I nearly went through the windscreen. But being a GT car, you can do a lot of miles in this. And the owner of this particular car has on several occasions driven all the way down to Monaco in it for the classic. Whereas the modern day equivalent to an 812, you'd have to rev it to get all of its power, but with this, even from low down, you just glide up on a wave of torque. You just get this beautiful character, even if you're taking it steady. Through the 80s, Ferrari got a bit of a bad rep, and so you'd think the cars that were older were just as poorly built. That's just not the case. Everything feels solid, really well engineered. Just 330 GTB 4s were ever built, so they are really rare. Now there was also a good mention in a film called Gone in 60 Seconds about the Ferrari being a connoisseur's Ferrari. But there was also another car that featured in that film, and that also came from 1967. In fact, there she is. There's Eleanor. Very rare that we feature cars from across the pond, and out of the quite extensive amount of cars that I've ever driven, I've never actually driven a Mustang. But today I finally get to live the American dream and drive not just any Mustang, but a GT500 Shelby Mustang, one that's better known as Eleanor. In some ways, this is less like getting to drive one of my hero cars and more meeting a Hollywood star. I mean, the GT500 was quite highly regarded anyway, and then after the film Gone in 60 Seconds, it just became a mega star, and therefore prices shot through the roof. I mean, this car's got quite a big cult following of its own. Everyone knows that this is Eleanor, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. So forgetting the Gone in 60 Seconds for a while, let's just compare it to the 275. Whereas that's been made to be lighter and sleeker, more agile, quicker out of the corners. The Americans' approach to things were, hell, let's just give it a bigger engine. And that's why this has got a 7-litre V8. Now this car and the 275 GTB4 are actually really closely linked, a lot more so than you might expect, because both of their engines were derived from their counterpart race cars. And I think we know what was going off on track in 1966 and 67. The old Ferrari-Ford battle. Therefore, this has a 7-litre V8 engine based on the Ford GT40. Just like the 275 has a quad cam V12 based on the 330p4. But despite the size difference in the 7-litre Ford engines to just the 4-litre Ferrari V12s, the Ford only put out 425 brake horsepower and the Ferrari's 450. But before you start waving your European flags about, Ford argued that the small, stressed engine of the V12 Ferraris were a lot less reliable, and the understressed 7-litre V8 would last the full race. I mean, so what is it like to drive a 67 Shelby Mustang GT500? Well, it's different, that's for sure. You have to have your wits about you. Although it's sunny, it's still a little bit damp, especially under those trees, and there's a lot of power there going through some rear wheels, and I have seen far too many Mustang accidents to want to throttle this thing too much. The steering wheel, as you can see, is constantly being worked. I was actually expecting it to be a lot worse than this. But oh, you can forgive all the little character flaws, just for when you stir that gearbox. I mean, whereas the 275, even for a 60s car, feels like a precision instrument, this definitely does not. It's just brutal in every sense. Except for the brakes. They're not brutal, they just don't work at all. They're just not there. Oh, but that engine does. Oh. There's something about the sound of a Mustang. It's the sound of car chasers. All car chasers should sound like that. I was expecting to be fed up of this thing by now. But you know what? I could drive it all day. It's getting a bit hot in here, but that doesn't matter. So I'm driving a Shelby Mustang GT500. The noise! Oh my god, 7 litres! Actually, one of the things I love about this is it is a challenge to drive. There's never a dull moment, and there's never any peace and quiet, that's for sure. But I might just need to go that bit faster, so excuse me a minute.
This has to be one of my favourite pairings we've ever featured on the channel. I mean, it's not every day you get to drive such hero cars, and this truly was a case of meeting a pair of Hollywood stars, which were much more closely linked than just featuring in the same film. Taking the couple of million price tag difference out of the equation for now, which one would you take and why? Let us know in the comments below.